All right, so the thumbs up is now the thing. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Mount Carmel Bible Church. I'm Pastor Richard. Great to have you with us. Again, for the people that are sitting here going, what is he doing? That's for the recording. We do have people that are watching at home, and we appreciate that. Today, our readings are going to be from Jonah, first, second, and third chapters. So, I'm bouncing around a little bit. And, okay. Last week was Shark Week, so I may have been influenced by outside sources to go talk about Jonah. And of course, we all know the story of Jonah and the whale. But sometimes it's good to go back and reread the different stories that we're super familiar with to get some more information out of. Every year we talk about the Christmas programs. We listen to this, you talk about the same story over and over again, but it's important to be reminded of that. Easter, same thing. So we should always go back once in a while to those familiar stories and try to peel away some layers of the story to get more ideas from them. So when I think of Jonah and the whale, of course we always think of big fish, guy living in a fish for a few days, and that's kind of a neat story. Keeps our attention. That's something we're not going to forget. Even the children remember that. But we don't always remember, why was he there? How did he get there? What was the story involved in that? And you can kind of break that down into, have you ever been told to do something and you didn't want to do it? I know my daughter's going, yes, yes. As children, we all got told to do stuff that we didn't want to do. Sometimes we just kind of said, yeah, it's done, and it wasn't done. Sometimes we just try to hide it from doing it. The dog ate her homework.
Yeah.
Remember that story? We all have excuses, and we all had something that, we would come up with to get away with not doing something we were supposed to do. And that's kind of where Jonah started. He was told to do something and he didn't want to do it. So, using the same tactics that we use sometimes, he tried to run away from his problem. That didn't quite work out for him now, did it? But we can remember that when we are told to do something, God is patient with us. Sometimes he tells us to do stuff and we just don't hear it. He says, we drive by a car that has a flat tire and we just keep driving. He gave us the opportunity to show this person God's love and stop and help them, but we didn't hear it. He's patient with us. Sometimes we'll see another car that's broke down later on, and eventually our car will break down and we'll see all the cars driving by. If we don't get the reminder one way, he'll give us the reminder another way. God is patient with us. He will give us the message until we get it. God will push us to do what he wants us to do. If we're told over and over again to do something and we don't, sometimes we get corrected. Children know this. When they get told to do something over and over again, sometimes they get corrected. They get the attitude adjustment. They get the motivation in whatever form that turns out to be. Sometimes it's a gentle reminder. Sometimes it's a little less gentle. Same with God. He's our Father. He's done the same thing. Look at Israel. Over time, he told them, do this. And they tended not to do that. And eventually, they got smacked around until he came around. The whole world has gone through these cycles. Follow God's instruction, please. Follow God's instruction, no more please. You will follow God's instruction. Eventually, we all get that hard love, that tough love. And hopefully, it doesn't come to the point where we're living in a fish. God will always get his way. Sometimes, like through the ministries, we're given the opportunities to help other people. And we choose to follow that. He says, here's an opportunity that you can feed people on Tuesday nights, and we follow that. Here's an opportunity we can get food to people in need, and we follow that. If we weren't to follow that, do you think God would let the people out there starve? He would find a way. That's what he wants done. He's going to find a way. It's going to get done. Whether it's with our help or without our help. He gives us the opportunity to be part of his plan, and that's a wonderful thing. If we choose to accept it. If we don't, he'll find someone else to do that. And they will get the blessings. But Jonah, God told Jonah to go and preach to a town called Nineveh. And Jonah didn't like Nineveh. He hated Nineveh. We got to remember, Jonah was a prophet. So the Lord talked to him and he spoke with authority. He spoke with the authority of God. When Jonah was told a message from the Lord to pass on, it meant something. It was important. It needed to be passed on. So when God told Jonah to do something, Jonah, being the prophet of the Lord, should have just done it. But even the prophets had issues sometimes. And this is one of the issues. Jonah 1:1-2. Now the word of the Lord came unto Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying, Arise and go to Nineveh, that great city, and call out against it, for their evil has come up before me. But Jonah rose and fled to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. From the presence of the Lord. He went down to Joppa and found a ship going to Tarshish. So he paid the fare and went down into it to go with them to Tarshish away from the presence of the Lord. That's Jonah 1:3. I've read this dozens of times, but I didn't really realize it until I was studying for this sermon. He was a prophet of the Lord, and he thought he could hide from God. Their understanding was a little bit different than our understanding. We know you can't hide from God, and this story is another example of that. But Jonah thought he could get away from the presence of the Lord. He was going to leave and get away from the Lord so that he wouldn't have to give this message to Nineveh. So from there, we all know the fish story. We all know what happened. He got on the boat. The Lord brought up a storm. The boat was tossed around. People on the boat were scared. They talked amongst each other, found out what was going on. They asked Jonah what they could do. Jonah said, if you toss me out of the boat, then you'll be safe. They hemmed and hawed. They didn't want to do that. Some of these people weren't Jewish. They didn't have our God. But they still feared God. They still feared the storm that God brought. They heard the stories of what God did in Egypt. they still feared God, even though they didn't worship him. So eventually, they took Jonah's advice and forcibly threw him off the boat. And the storm calmed, and the people on the boat were safe. Well, Jonah started sinking into the sea, and then he was swallowed by the fish. Now, King James Version will say it's a big fish. If you look at the ancient writings in Hebrew, they described it as a big fish. We all call it a whale now, because there was no term for whale when the Old Testament was written. It was just a big fish. We all assume it was a whale, but we don't know for sure. Could have been some other fish. Could have been a shark. Could have been it. But after 3 days living inside a fish, now try to imagine this. Try to imagine being inside a fish. You ever open a can of tuna and then put the can of tuna in the garbage can without rinsing it out, and then the next morning you smell the tuna in the kitchen? It's not a very pleasant smell when it fills the kitchen. I love tuna fish sandwiches, but that would be a little much. Now imagine that smell, and instead of being in a nice, cool building, you're in a damp, warm, wet place. And you got to imagine also that you're in a fish. The pictures that you see are Jonah in a big area with a torch. He didn't have a torch. And again, if he did have a torch, it would have been soaking wet. So he wouldn't have been able to light one. So he'd be in total darkness, surrounded by slime and filth and stink. This is not a pleasant place to be. And you think about how angry he was at God for telling him he had to go to Nineveh, that it took him 3 days in the fish before he repented, before he gave up and said, all right, Lord, you got this. I'll do what you say. I'm sorry. That's basically what he's saying here in Jonah's prayer. Then Jonah prayed to the Lord, his God, from the belly of the fish, saying, I call out to the Lord out of my distress, and he answered me. Out of the belly of soul. Soul is the ancient Hebrew word for hell. I cried, and you noticed, or you heard my voice. For you cast me into the deep, into the heart of the sea, and the flood surrounded me. All your waves and your billows passed over me. And then I said, I am driven away from your sight. Yet I shall again look upon your holy temple. The waters closed over me to take my life. The deep surrounded me. Weeds were wrapped around my head at the roots of the mountain. I went down to the land whose bars closed upon me forever. Yet you brought me up, my life from the pit. O Lord my God, when my life was fainting away, I remembered the Lord, and my prayers came to you. Unto your holy temple, those who paid regard the vain idols forsake your hope of steadfast love. But I with the voice of thanksgiving will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed I will pay. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Now it's a beautiful, beautiful prayer. And notice, this is the Old Testament, so they had to speak to God at the temple. They had to sacrifice at the temple. That's why he's referring to, I will see the temple again. I will see God again. He's repenting of his sin. He's giving up to the Lord, which he probably should have done before he got sucked into the fish. So the Lord again asked Jonah. Then the word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time, saying, Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and call out against it the message that I tell you. That's Jonah 3:1-2. So God gave him a second chance. Not only did he give him a second chance, he gave him a pretty stern warning, right? You do what I tell you, or this is going to happen. And he proved it. God doesn't ask us more than once usually. He usually gives us opportunities. He gives us opportunities and then opportunities. When he tells us to do something, we should do it. When he gives us opportunities, we should take it. And later on, the people of Nineveh repented. Jonah went to Nineveh reluctantly. He went and gave them the message that God told him. And to his surprise, Nineveh heard it. They realized Jonah was a prophet of the Lord. He spoke with authority from the Lord. And when he told them that the Lord was not pleased with what you guys are doing, they took a breath. They're like, whoa, we didn't realize we were that bad. Not only did they not realize that they were that bad, they turned from what they were doing immediately and started groveling, started showing God that they were sorry. And how did they do this? The word reached the king of Nineveh, and he arose from his throne, removed his robe, covered himself with sackcloth, and sat in ashes. And he issued a proclamation and published throughout Nineveh, by the decree of the king and his nobles, let neither man nor beast, herd nor flock taste anything. Let them not feed or drink water, but let man and beast be covered with sackcloths, and let them call out mighty to God. Let everyone turn from their evil ways and from the violence that is in their hands. Who knows, God may turn and relent and turn from his fierce anger, so that we may not perish. When God saw what they did, how they turned from their evil ways, God relented from the disaster that he had said he would do to them. And he did not do it. The Lord told Jonah to warn these people. If they keep going on the path they're going, if they keep following sin, he was going to destroy them. And when they heard this, they feared God. They loved God. They repented in the most powerful way they knew how. They stripped themselves of their clothing and wore sackcloths. They dressed in rags, humbling themselves to the Lord. They sat in ashes, humbling themselves to the Lord. They fasted, showing the Lord they were sorry. Not just praying and saying, hey, forgive me my sins. They showed how sorry they were. And the Lord saw this, saw their hearts, and realized, yeah, they got the message. So instead of destroying them, he held back that judgment. All because Jonah, his prophet, did what he was supposed to do. So what are some of the takeaways from this? Well, when God tells you to do something, do it. When he gives you a message to give to others, give it. When he lays something on your heart to do it. God is patient. He wanted Jonah to do this. Jonah didn't want to do it. God knew that. God knew that if he was patient with Jonah, if he got his attention, showed him how important this was, he would do it. So, he had patience and continued to work with Jonah. God is forgiving. Nineveh made mistakes. Jonah made mistakes. But just because they make mistakes doesn't mean the Lord's going to punish them. He'll get their attention. He'll send somebody with a dire warning. You are going to be destroyed if you don't change from your ways. Back that up. You're going to tell Nineveh what I'm telling you to tell them, or else. God forgave Jonah for running away. He forgave Nineveh for turning away. He can forgive us for the same. God gives us warnings. He gives us warnings all the time. Sometimes they're subtle warnings. Sometimes they're not so subtle. And he continues to give us second chances. Sometimes second, third, fourth, etc., etc. He's a patient God. He wants us all to be happy. He wants us all to come to him so we can all be with him in heaven. And he's very patient with us. But we should always remember that he is powerful. He is just. And he has the plans. He knows what's going to happen. He knows how best to take care of us. We just got to let him. We just got to go to him with love, trust, and obedience. Now next week, if this happens, there is a part 2 to this, where we look at chapter 4. So if you want to get a head start on it, we're going to look at chapter 4. I want to say next week, but he may have different plans. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for giving us this message today of second chances, of obedience, of your love and compassion, and your guidance. Thank you for showing us that you give us second chances. Showing us that you love us and you want to take care of us. Even when we turn away from you, you're still trying to get our attention. Help us to follow that path and stay with our attention to where it belongs, on you. Keep us from straying into this world. Keep us from making mistakes. Keep us from turning away. We love you, Lord. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen.